Yo, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Prems, and I am back again today with another One Piece review. And today we're taking a look at One Piece 1028. Brachiosaur Hiss. And I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't make sense of the title before reading the chapter, but after reading it, it makes so much more sense. And I'm so happy with Oda at the moment because One Piece is so hype. It's literally chapter after chapter of greatness. And so I must say, I do commend him. But if you're watching this, then I assume that you've already read the chapter, and so you know what this chapter is literally focused on. And that's two aspects. That's CP0, and of course the evolution of the boy, Sanji. But let me not forget, we still have the stuff with Yamato and Momonosuke that was briefly touched on in this chapter. So let's start off there, because we found out previously that both Yamato and Momonosuke showed their faith in Luffy and understood his resolve and allowed him to fight Kaido in a 1v1. And anyone who's a true One Piece reader understands the importance of this, because as it's been said many times, 1v1 bet on Kaido. But just knowing Luffy and everything he's done so far, of course it would be him to change those odds. But moving on from this, we found out how close Onigashima was to the Flower Capital, and now in this chapter we find out that it's only 5 minutes away. So at this moment, the citizens on the Flower Capital are at crazy risk, because as Yamato mentioned last chapter, the Flower Capital is basically a minefield just waiting to explode with all the weapons and gunpowder that they have there. So the first form of defense is Momonosuke, and that is for him to create the flame clouds like Kaido had in order to keep Onigashima afloat. However, as we see in the chapter, Momo still hasn't grasped the concept of how to do this, and he's literally just there, effectively hyping himself up to try and learn how to do this in the next 5 minutes. But in the meantime, Yamato has gone into her full mythical zone form, as solely relying on Momonosuke would be silly, and she's headed to the Flower Capital to go and destroy the explosives before Onigashima arrives, in order to minimize the damage and effectively try and save as many lives as possible. And I'm intrigued as to what will happen, because she highlights that they're being stored in the basement of the giant armory, and for some reason I feel like she's going to run into someone as she gets there, so definitely watch this space. But let's take a step back and take a look at the beginning of this chapter, and that is a conversation that CP0 are currently having. And to be honest, the unnamed CP0 agent in Wano is on the Dendenmushi explaining the situation. He or she explains that another dragon appeared in front of Kaido, and it matches the fell devil fruit that Vegapunk made, and it's fighting alongside Straw Hat Luffy. And this is actually interesting, because now CP0 know that the fruit wasn't a failure, and so I do wonder what the repercussions will be for the likes of Vegapunk. I mean, do they go back and find out why he lied about it? That would be something interesting to see for later on in the story. But we also find out who it was that made this call, and it was Rob Lucci, who I always think it's so cool to see, just because I'm always reminded of that terrific fight at Enies Lobby against Luffy. And Rob Lucci is here calling to announce that a decision has been made by the higher ups, and that CP0 now have two goals. And the first is dependent on what happens if Kaido is defeated. And although they're talking about it, it appears that both Lucci and the rest of the CP0 members can't envision this even happening. But in the rare case that it does, the world government have decided that they will be taking control of the land of Wano. And in order to do this, they have ships on the way there, and I'm assuming they're not too far from Wano now. And I also think that Rob Lucci is on one of these ships. And I mean, although they do not expect Kaido to fall, it's seeming even more possible right now, as we get an outlook from the Go Game board that the CP0 member possesses, and it shows the state of the battle, where in the beginning it was a 30,000 strong Beast Pirates against the 5,400 strong Alliance. However, as it stands today, there are only 12,000 Beast Pirates left and 8,000 of the Alliance, and therefore Kaido's defeat is slightly even more possible. And as I said before, CP0 do have 2 goals, and this was just the first of them. And the second of them, as some of you probably predicted before it was said, is to capture Nico Robin, because they find her presence and the fact that she's alive to be extremely significant, and to not be understated either. And so it will be interesting to see how this goes, particularly after we got that fantastic I want to live moment at Enies lobby. But at that point, Robin had to rely on her friends to save her, so I can only imagine what will happen with this. Now at this point, the chapter pans away to a panel of Robin and Brook, and it seems that Robin has recovered and Brook is fighting off all the fodder characters that are coming towards them. And the last thing I want to cover is the intense battle that's occurring between Sanji and Queen, because this is what the theories over the next week or two are going to be focused on. There are going to be so many discussions on this, because as we found out a couple of chapters ago, Sanji mentioned that his body was feeling strange and was effectively losing his focus during the battle and dozing off. And we find out here that he's still refusing to put on his raid suit because it made his body feel weird. But Sanji is in a bit of a pickle here, because Queen is crazy strong and Sanji is just about holding out, and it appears the real reason behind this is because Queen wants Sanji to use his raid suit. Clearly Queen thinks his technology is better than Judge's, and so clearly taking out his frustrations on Sanji. And I mean, he then goes on to say that Sanji used it against King, and so he should use it against him too. And in order to force him to do this, Queen goes to hit Sanji with one of his attacks named Black Coffee. And in order to cancel this out, Sanji has to use the Diable Jambe attack, but realizes that Queen's dinosaur hide is actually very tough. And it seems that Sanji is getting tired here, as he's panting quite hard at the moment. But what we get next is hilarious, and also impressive too at the same time, because Queen shows us his true power as his head shoots out of his body, and we find out that Queen also has a snake type form or python form and now has wrapped his body around Sanji. And there's no way out for Sanji. He calls this his Bracoil hold and says that no one has ever escaped, not even masters of armament haki. He tells us that they've all had their bones crushed and their inner bodies are beyond repair. But we get the comedic Queen moment as he teases us that his body has launchers, and as soon as he mentions them, they'll shoot and blow Sanji up. And it's in that moment that the launchers are fired, because Queen here has accidentally mentioned them. And so at this point, both Queen and Sanji are hit by the launchers. But Queen appears to not be worried, as he believes that the damage is already done to Sanji. And he's both right and wrong at the same time, because we can evidently see that Sanji's bones are all bent and broken. However, he can definitely still move. We can see Sanji's body slowly returning to normal, and at this point, Sanji's coming to the realization that he's awakening the same ability that his siblings have. And as Sanji's in thinking mode, Queen sneak attacks him and uses his sword to try and cut Sanji. But instead of Sanji being cut, it's actually Queen's sword that breaks. And while Sanji should be jubilant that he's not taken any damage, he seems almost furious, and he states that he doesn't want to become a monster like his siblings. And this effectively brings the chapter to an end. And unfortunately, there's a break next week. But wow, what a chapter. With a break next week, I'm sure there's going to be loads of discussions on this one. And as a Sanji fan, I'm actually quite hyped for this, because this is another power up and it'll be interesting to see how he uses it. I am tempted to discuss this a little further myself, so do keep posted for that. But as usual, if you like anything I've had to say, then please make sure you leave a like on the video, and if you want to support your boy, make sure you sub to the channel so you never miss out when I drop more reviews just like this. Say